Our buddy David Harsanyi from National Review back in the mix. He joins us now to talk about the peace deals and also some deep state action. We got our man David join us. David, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start with the change that people should have now in their thinking about consensus foreign policy, and how anytime there's an issue of foreign policy where all the smart people are just supposed to think a certain thing, people should have their concerns. Here is John Kerry, Obama's second Secretary of State, in the most drippingly condescending and arrogant tone possible, telling everybody, I mean, there's no peace deals with Israel in the Middle East that don't go right through the Palestinian Authority. Play 4.
There will be no separate peace between Israel and the Arab world. I want to make that very clear to all of you. I've heard several prominent politicians in Israel sometimes saying, well, the Arab world's in a different place now. We just have to reach out to them and we can work some things with the Arab world and we'll deal with the Palestinians. No, 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 and no. I can tell you that, reaffirmed even in the last week as I have talked to leaders of the Arab community. There will be no advance and separate peace with the Arab world without the Palestinian process and Palestinian peace. Everybody needs to understand that. That is a hard reality.
There is no way, David, that John Kerry, then the most recent Democrat Secretary of State, says. I mean, as everyone's been pointing out, this aged about as well as raw hamburger meat left in the trunk of a car in Dallas in July. But what say you?
Well, I think you said it very well there. But we have to remember that this is just one of the comments. John Kerry has made dozens of similar, very confident comments about how the Middle East would never have peace if there wasn't first a Palestinian state. If Israel didn't first capitulate to Hamas and the PLO, that he said that Israel would be isolated economically if they didn't, first make a deal with the PLO. Meanwhile, of course, Israel is one of the top investment destinations there are in that region, and now they're going to have these relationships with very wealthy Arab nations. He's completely wrong. And of course, he's just echoing the consensus. I love that in that clip, behind him, it says Brookings Institute, where, tons of minds have been wrong for dozens of years. And we keep listening to them. We're expected to listen to them. We have them in government. We have them on MSNBC and CNN, confidently explaining to us what's going on there. They've been wrong in every way. I noted this in a column this week, but Jared Kushner has done more in 4 years for peace than everyone at Brookings has done in 100 years for peace. And that's just the fact. There's no way around it anymore. And anyone who argues that the prism of all foreign policy should be conducted through the Palestinian Authority in the Middle East is no longer, it's just not a credible person anymore.
And I think of Thomas Friedman, for example, who, for me, has just always been a creation of the liberal media. I mean, here's a guy who was such a huge proponent of how, Palestinian, it became trendy when I was, in college and in high school to think of the most important challenge in the world was finding a way to make the Palestinians happy enough that they would stop threatening to destroy Israel. That was it, right? There was no other policy challenge as important as getting the Palestinians and Hamas and the PLO, as you point out, the Palestinian Authority, the PA, to finally say we're going to stop destroying Israel. And nothing else was worth even discussing in the region. This was an ossified consensus for years and years. And it's just such a reminder. The people that say this stuff and write these articles, they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
No, I don't listen. I'm not some big brain or anything like that. But it was clear from the early 90s on that this was not going to work. It never works. The Palestinian Authority is just incapable of making a deal with Israel that is something that's acceptable to both sides. They want a right of return, which is suicidal for Israel. They want to go back to the 67 lines, which is not suicidal for Israel. They want to create a little mini terror state next door, which is not going to happen. So why this is so historic, I think, is that they've circumvented that whole discussion within the agreement that these nations made the other day. It mentions nothing about a Palestinian state. It mentions nothing about a right of return and the usual things that are always part of these agreements. And more than that, the Arab League itself would not even condemn the deal in any way. So the Palestinians, who basically had veto power over the foreign policy in the region, no longer have that. And that is what's super important, for Obama and for the Kerry types. Everything's about Iran. Everything is about making a deal with Iran. I saw Jeffrey Goldberg, who's been as wrong as anyone on the Middle East, say, look at this, Israel's just making deals with authoritarians, and this is just all about that, as if Palestinians and Iranians aren't authoritarians. And he's been, pining for a deal with them. You have to deal with certain people, and they're not the best people, but I'd rather have bad people who are on my side than bad people who aren't, and dealing with them. So I think it's a really historic deal. I'm not sure people fully comprehend that, who haven't been around a long time, unfortunately, like myself.
Right, and the other talking point I just thought was pretty amazing is, well, Israel's gotten a deal now with two countries it's never been at war with. These are countries that pretend that Israel doesn't exist, that won't allow an Israeli passport to fly through. I mean, there's enormous animosity and restrictions that had existed between these countries previously. But, whatever works for the news cycle, whatever gets some clicks.
That is the most insane and stupid thing to say of all the talking points I've seen. I mean, we've never been at war with Russia either, right? It's, it's the Gulf nations. They helped create the Palestinian the PLO, and they helped create Hamas, and they were funding even before 1967. They were funding terrorism against Jewish civilians around the world. To me, that sounds like a war of some sort. You can call use whatever word you like, but more than that is a sea change in how people are going to deal with each other. If some countries in the Arab world have friendly relationships with Israel and Jewish people, that is going to probably spread. When people do business together, they form relationships together. They form cultural bonds together. I mean, this is really important in that aspect, and that's not obviously just written out in an agreement. It's just more about the spirit of where the world is headed, rather than this ridiculous idea that, they weren't going to launch weapons at each other. No, they weren't, because no one launches weapons at Israel nearby anymore, because it doesn't end well.
David, I also want to talk to you about, I know you wrote a column about this recently. This should have gotten a lot more attention, in my view. First of all, I'm a little annoyed at myself because, Mattis kind of predated my institution of this rule. But now I know that anyone that the media elevates from within the nonpartisan ranks of government service, anyone the media tells you is amazing, is almost always an egomaniac, and at some level, there's a real problem, right? I mean, at some level, this is sort of a fraudulent narrative that we've been handed. I'm not saying entirely, but there's something off. There's something, we were told that James Comey was like the greatest lawman in the history of the world. We were told that Robert Mueller was the ultimate FBI guy. We were told, but I remember this, and so it's not even always a strictly partisan thing. Petraeus was the most brilliant and fantastic strategic mind ever. Yeah, when he wasn't, whatting with his biographer under the desk in Afghanistan while people are fighting and dying for him. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And never mind also the classified information leak that he engaged in. But Mattis was always treated like this warrior monk, almost like a saint of the Marine Corps. And I do hear from people in the military say that they really liked him. But there were some warning signs about him maybe getting a little too big for his britches, so to speak, thinking that his mandate extended beyond, and that he would say, and this is written about in the Wilbur book, and no one denies this, that they may need to take collective action against the sitting president. That should set off a lot more alarm bells from people than I think we've seen so far.
Yeah, but because it's against Trump and it's resistance porn, it's fine and no one's going to say anything. But that little snippet in the book, it's a chapter there that the whole book frames Mattis as some kind of great hero who's constantly concerned about what's going to happen to America and et cetera. They are always putting, he goes to the National Cathedral to pray for America. There's a whole scene of that. As you know, in Washington, that's a huge tourist spot, not a place you slip away to pray for the country. But anyways, aside from that, yeah, collective action with with high-ranking members of the administration. And then why? Because he didn't like the decisions that Donald Trump was making, Syria, probably mostly Syria, Russia, et cetera. So that's not up to him. He's a general, and we in this country, the military answers to civilians. Donald Trump was very clear that he wanted to get out of Syria. He mentions it numerous times during the 2016 campaign. So why, first of all, was Mattis so surprised that was happening, A? And B, even if he was surprised, he should have left the administration, which he did, and then taken it to the media, not plotted or whatever word you want to use behind the scenes. Now, I don't know if anything came of those conversations, but it's not a heroic thing to say you're going to take collective action to undermine an duly elected president who we still don't know of a single vote that was changed by the Russians or anyone else to make him president. He was voted in by the American people. And I don't like everything he does either. But the idea that generals should be deciding where we go and where we don't go, I think, as you mentioned before, is a good indication that deep state, even though they try to sort of embarrass you when you use that word, but because it sounds conspiratorial, but it actually does exist. To some extent, there are people in the administration, in the executive branch, who plotted against the president that they're supposed to serve. And that's not normal. And that's probably it hasn't happened in a very long time to this extent.
And I'd also note that not only were they trying to manufacture, in the case of Russia collusion, the Mueller probe, crimes the president committed that he didn't, they also seem to think that there is some special exception to service in the executive branch where you can override the president who's doing something completely, everyone agrees, legal or within the bounds of his authority for him to do, but you just don't like it. You know better. The betterism within the national security apparatus is stunning. And as somebody who worked in that apparatus and knows that it is full of morons, by the way, not everybody, but a lot of them, morons all over the place. That's very unsettling, actually. That notion that this is so widespread, whether it's Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, or call me Lieutenant Colonel, sir, right? That guy, or it's Mattis, or it's, just go down the list of these people, all these different FBI and DOJ figures. What was this? Rosenstein with the 25th Amendment? Based on what?
It's like there's a permanent bureaucracy in place that runs the country almost, it seems. And now, because it's Donald Trump as president, they are given we have to treat them with this reverence that I've never seen Democrats treat soldiers with before, or even civil servants. Civil servants are just working. It's just a job. They're supposed to do a good job, and they're supposed to listen to their boss like everyone else does. And if they don't like it, they should quit and then make their case to the American people. But they don't do that. They leak things to reporters who, of course, show either no skepticism or are part of this, and undermine the presidency, delegitimize elections. It's a really dangerous thing to be doing just because they don't like what Donald Trump is up to in foreign policy, which incidentally, I want to say I was very skeptical of it before he became president, but I just don't see how any clear-minded person can say that this 4 years in foreign policy wasn't better than the 8 years that preceded it, even though Germans and French and Swiss don't like us or whatever, or don't like him. I don't really care. I think that he has not gotten us involved in a new conflict. He's the first president maybe since Jimmy Carter. And I think the American foreign policy was handled better than it was before. But that's up to voters, not up to Mattis or any other general.
David Arsani, everybody, nationalreview.com for his latest. David, stay safe, stay free down there in D.C., man. Good to talk to you.
You too. Thank you.
I almost forgot. One of my favorite things that Barr has been in fuego this week. One of my favorite things that he did was mention that he thinks that they should consider, that federal prosecutors should consider, it is on the books, it is a law, and it is good law. It is applicable still, charging people who were plotting to destroy federal buildings with sedition. Oh, wait a second. Here's a Democrat senator who's, of course, very upset about this. Merkley, play 8.
I'm astounded. If people are engaged in property damage, and I condemn violence on all fronts, they should be charged with property damage. But what I read into Attorney General Barr's comments is he wants people who are protesting in opposition to the administration to be charged with sedition. I don't know that it's that clearly laid out, but that was the impression I took from it. This is a part of imperial presidency, an authoritarian approach where you undermine the legitimacy of the press. You absolutely make disagreeing with the administration a crime, charge them with sedition. I think the attorney generals or the various prosecutors who weighed in and shared that news, they are professionals who were just astounded that our top law enforcement person would propose really what is politicizing protest.
It's not protest, moron. We're talking about people who were destroying things. That's not protest. Lighting buildings on fire, attacking police, breaking glass windows. That's not protest. That's rioting. And if it's an organized riot activity and it goes after a federal building and is meant to undermine the federal government, it would fall under statutes covering sedition, the attempt to overthrow in part or in whole the federal government. Sedition. The Democrats are guilty of sedition. That's real. That's truth. Not all of them, the ones who are doing this stuff, the ones who are engaged in this attempt to burn down. They're trying to burn down a federal courthouse in Portland. I mean, that was a night after night activity. And saying that they want to topple the state, I think that counts. I think that that raises to the level. You know, there are a couple of hundred people who are in federal custody right now, and they're facing some really serious federal charges, as they should. It's not all fun and games anymore, is it, lib rioters? It's not all just one big ha-ha, look at us, we're going to throw bags of urine at the police, ha-ha, yeah. You might end up spending 3, 4, 5 years in federal prison. That'll really put a damper on your riot fun activities. This is great. I think this is fantastic. Oh, authoritarian regime, please. These people are doing criminal acts. No one's talking about legal protest. There hasn't been a single protester who's been harassed in the least who's not breaking the law. By federal prosecutors, they're not going after them. They're not making problems for them. No one cares. Protest all day. Go for it, right? This is about people who are engaged in criminal acts in violation of the law and holding them accountable. And that needs to happen. And because it's going to, unfortunately for the libs, mean that some of their favorite little paramilitary street soldier types are going to end up maybe spending a long time in a federal pen. Too bad, libs. Big Ten football is back. Producer Mark, what's going on here? You probably know more about this one than I do.
I believe they just decided they're coming back to play after originally, around August, deciding they would not play a football season in the fall. I think they tried to say they would play it in the spring. I believe the idea is now to get it going around Halloween, maybe a little bit before that.
And the president's taking some credit for this one. I guess he was encouraging them, and now we're hearing that he's going to push it even beyond the Big Ten. Is the Big Ten is it the best? No, the SEC, you told me this. I remember this now. I listen. Yes. The SEC is the best football conference.
Yes, it is. But the Big Ten is one of the better ones as well. It's one of the Big Five football conferences and was one of the two that was not going to play this season. Them and the Pac-12 had decided to not play.
Who is do you watch college football?
I mean, as a New Yorker, no, because there's not really a good team around here.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, how good is Rutgers?
They're not very good. They're in the Big Ten. They joined the Big Ten. That was like their big move to try and advance their athletics, but they're just awful.
So do they get their butts kicked by the other Big Ten teams pretty much all the time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've won a couple games here and there, but they're not very good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the NYU football team would would not. I don't think they actually have a football team. No, I don't even think they have one.
I know Columbia does. I don't think
Columbia
NYU
does. I don't think NYU does. I know there's some other schools that have gotten rid of their football teams. I grew up in New York City.
Yeah, my alma mater did.
Yeah, I grew up in New York City, so football is not a big sport here to play. A lot of people watch it, but it's not a sport that a lot of people. If you live in the 5 boroughs, there's not a lot of football leagues. Believe it or not.
Yeah, people are
lacrosse
diehard for the
and
Jets
soccer.
or the Giants, but there's no college football.
Yeah,
And
there's
yes,
no college
lacrosse
football
on Long Island.
And because there's no college football, you just have less of a, you have less of a draw for it. Yeah, lacrosse is huge in Long Island and New Jersey. I know that, and it's big in the South too. I feel like there are a lot of places out west where they don't really play much lacrosse, but they're too busy skiing or something. Anyway, Big Ten is back, everybody. So if you like college sports, which hey, I'll give college football a watch. They're not. I don't see them kneeling. So there's that. I don't see them doing any of that nonsense.
Just out of curiosity, do you think they're not going to kneel?
That's a good. I don't think the college sports will be kneeling. Do you?
I don't know. I have no idea. It's just a general question to put out there for the audience because I don't know if the schools are going to let them. I don't know what the athletes are going to do. I guess we'll see. None of the big schools have really played yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I was unaware of that. I hadn't even thought of that way. I think it's an interesting point. All right, let's get to. Oh wait, before I get to this, I finished season 1 of Cobra Kai. Just saying, producer Mark, going on season 2 right now. Where are you, buddy? Where are you?
I have not started yet. There's a lot of sports on.
That's true. All right, roll call. Hit it.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. Team Buck at iHeartMedia.com. If you want to email us, we love that one. Please send us the emails. And if you're not already, follow me on Instagram. Posted a Tallulah photo this morning, so you get that going on. Yeah. So please do. Oh, and make sure you pass the buck. Get someone to listen to our podcast. We very much appreciate that. So,
What about our new podcast, Buck?
Oh, producer Mark, what we're calling it? The Best of Buck Daily, correct?
That is correct.
Guys, just so you all know, I think this is important. Thank you, producer Mark, for the reminder. You can now listen to a Best of Daily show. Now, that is the show from the day, just condensed down. We thought it'd be fun for folks. If you want to listen to the whole show, you always have that option. Same feed. You don't have to change it and subscribe to anything different. But if you're like, look, I've only got 35, 40 minutes to listen today, you can listen to Best of Buck Daily because we pick from a couple of the hours so that you get more topics in a shorter period of time, and it feels a little bit more like a complete but condensed show. So you can listen to Best of Buck Daily. Same show, just a shorter version of it because we felt like people might appreciate that format, that little style change. But if you want to listen to the full show every day, you can certainly do that too, on demand. The iHeart app, Spotify is a fantastic way to listen, and also Apple Podcasts. So that would be what I would ask you to check out. All right. Thank you for the reminder, producer Mark. Josh. Howdy, Buck. I grew up watching Hakeem Olajuwon school Patrick Ewing with the Dream Shake. I love watching the Houston Oilers and Texans no matter how bad their teams were. The return of football was magical. The NBA playoffs were thrilling. I have not watched any NBA or NFL games since they returned. The stench of hypocrisy is too much to endure. I cannot watch. Also, Das Boot is definitely the most realistic submarine movie. I concur with previous fans, but Crimson Tide is my favorite because Gene Hackman is the best. I thank you and producer Mark for providing fresh air in the Freedom Hut with all the communist stench out there. Shields high from KLBJ Austin. Well, Josh, one of my brothers is actually currently in the process of moving to Austin. I'm very tight with my family, my brothers, my sister, my parents. And so once he's down there, I am absolutely 100% making it down to Austin to visit him. And so I don't know what we'll do, but for KLBJ folks, we might just put up the bat signal. Maybe we'll tell the station to let people know we'll be at a barbecue joint one night and people want to come hang out. We can all have a drink and catch up or something. So that's because I've been wanting to get down to Austin and see all the KLBJ folks for a long time now. So that's going to happen. It's going to happen. So, yeah, there we go. And as for Olajuwon schooling Patrick Ewing, I'll never forget when it was the Rockets and the Knicks in the finals. And yeah, Olajuwon was just a better player. So Ewing has a bigger name, I think, in people's minds. People know Patrick Ewing more. Hakeem
only 'cause he played
Olajuwon
in
at
New
his
York.
peak was a better center than Patrick Ewing was. It just was. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Except I think the reason Ewing's more well known is because Georgetown #1 and because he played for the Knicks.
Yeah,
Played
no,
in New
I think that's true. But Hakeem Olajuwon was a better center, and in his heyday, because I'm trying to think if when he was at his peak. I don't think Shaq was really. I think Shaq might have been in his Orlando Magic phase. He wasn't yet in the Lakers dominance phase. But there was a time when Hakeem Olajuwon, I think, was the best center in the NBA. So, I mean, that guy, he just had way more of an offensive arsenal compared to Ewing. I mean, look, Patrick Ewing was 7 feet tall at a time when there weren't a lot of 7-footers in the league, and his go-to move was a fadeaway jump shot, which is the lowest percentage shot in the NBA. So you're the tallest guy on the floor, and you want to go for the lowest percentage shot. Hakeem was big into the drop step. Hakeem had a lot of moves around the rim to get to the rim, whereas Patrick was always like, give it to me on the elbow of the paint and let me do a 2-step drop fadeaway and see what happens. And that's why people like me, who grew up as super fans of the Knicks, believe it or not, just never got our championship. Never got one. Do you have a team that you love that sucks?
Yeah, the New York Mets. Come on. Duh.
I was trying to think of
We
what
talk
it was.
about it once a week.
Because the Rangers were like a dynasty for a while. The Rangers.
No, the Rangers didn't win a Stanley Cup for 54 years between 1940 and 1994.
Yeah, but when they had Mark Messier and stuff, didn't they win?
They
a cup?
won one championship.
Oh, one? Okay. I thought they won for a few years. All right. I was wrong about that one. But yeah, the Mets. So the Mets are going to be the Mets are going to be really good now. You're going to be coming on the show and be like, Steve Cohen is a genius. I love him. He's changed the game. Also, the food at the stadium. I actually think the food there is pretty good from what I'm told already. But I'm
Citi
sure
Field
now
has the best food in baseball.
Yeah, you're gonna be at like the Caviar Station watching a Dream Team play thanks to Steve Cohen.
I hope so.
Yeah. Do you like
Makes me
caviar?
very happy. I don't. What even is it?
Fish eggs.
No, I don't like caviar.
We're gonna make producer Mark try it sometime. Maybe we'll make a little video. Rich writes, I love watching you with Tucker, and now just found your podcast. Succinct, quick pace, and so very insightful. Thanks for all you do. Well, Rich, that's great. We love to hear about people who get discovery of the Buck Sexton Show. As I've said to you, I don't have millions of dollars of investor money that I spend on Facebook and all these things. The way this show grows is people listen to it and are like, oh, this is better than the other podcasts out there on politics. And people who listen to it and like it tell people. That's it. We grow by word of mouth. That is our primary mechanism, or word of text or email, I guess. But you telling people. So when I say pass the buck, the future of the show is in your hands. Those of you listening and who appreciate what I do, costs you nothing, helps us a lot, and I can't thank you enough for those of you who do it. Get a family member, get a friend, tell them, like, hey, if you listen, especially with this election cycle, if someone really wants to know what the primary issues are, they should be listening to this show. I'm not going to be shy about saying that. They should listen to this show. Brad. Hey, Buck and producer Mark. This idea of Joe Rogan hosting a debate between President Trump and Sleepy Joe is excellent. Trump should get together with Joe Rogan and set a date. It's up to Biden to show up. If Biden doesn't show, they can do an interview and spread reason to all of Joe Rogan's fan base. Also, the debate needs to be in person. Sleepy Joe can be in his own plexiglass aquarium on stage, but no Zoom calls where his team can feed him teleprompted answers. Keep up the good work. As always, shields high. Brad, that was funny. Thank you. I think Joe Rogan would be great. I've said that before. I think it would be much more interesting to have a non-traditional interviewer and broadcaster handling one of these. Look, you can still have the usual talking points contest debate with, fake Tapper or one of those jerks pretending to be even-handed in all this. But I really do believe that it would be a more interesting watch, a more illuminating experience for the people who decide to. But the problem with it is that the legacy media companies will see that and say, whoa, hold on a second. How long for this world are we? They need those built-in advantages, right? If CNN doesn't get to moderate a presidential debate, if it all of a sudden turns into who has the biggest audience, why is anyone watching CNN, right? They need these built-in advantages, and so they will not part with them easily. And there's a lot of pressure that is brought to bear on behalf of NBC and CNN and these different by the companies that are above them, that own them, that run them, right? So keep that in mind too. More roll call here. JJ writes, hey, Buck, just a quick comment about how the commies have taken over absolutely all industries. I follow several authors here on Instagram, and a couple of them shared a breaking news story that the country's largest printing presses are really backlogged thanks to COVID-19. Because of this, nearly all of the books slated for release during late fall and early winter have been pushed back 3 to 6 months. And yet we're all supposed to believe it's pure coincidence that dozens of anti-Trump books are somehow all making their way onto bookshelves with 6 weeks left until the election. I also noticed that my local Target now has its own dedicated anti-racism end cap in the book section. It would make me laugh if it weren't all so truly despicable. Thanks, guys, for all you do, keeping us safe and warm at night. That's how we roll. We keep Team Buck safe and warm at night with the Freedom Hut. And JJ, yeah, I'm look, the major publishers are as lib dominated as Netflix and the news media and all the rest of it. So the libs run publishing, the libs run media, the libs are in charge of all that stuff, unfortunately. And so it wouldn't be the least bit. In fact, I would go so far as to say it would be surprising if we found out that wasn't happening, right? If they weren't stacking the deck in favor of Biden with the books that are getting published, I'd say, wow, really? That's crazy. I would just expect it. All righty. Diane writes, Buck, I have 2 questions. I'm hoping you can answer them. First, what is the drop-dead date for Dems to potentially replace Biden? And second, while I believe there's no precedent, could Harris debate Trump? We're definitely at a time where we all need to keep our shields high. Thanks for all you do. Diane, I don't really know the technicality of, I just know that I don't think they couldn't get him on the ballot now, or they couldn't get someone to replace Biden on the ballot. So no, they're not going to replace Biden at this stage. You can put that one out. I appreciate your thinking outside the box, but I don't think that's going to happen. And as for Harris debating Trump, that wouldn't happen either, because that would be effectively an admission that Biden, everything that we're saying about Biden being too old and not of sound mind is true, and that would hurt him. So that they can't do that either. But you are right in thinking that what has been normal in the past is not necessarily what's going to be in the future. So do keep your eyes open for things that one would assume are untenable, impossible, would never happen, and then all of a sudden they happen because we're living in this crazy time where Democrats have no accountability. Douglas, Buck, we have to stop talking about the popular vote for the presidency. There is no such thing as the popular vote for president. Hillary did not win the popular vote. A national popular vote is not an alternative way to elect the president. There are not 2 types of votes that determine the presidency. Like it or not, understand it or not, only the popular votes in each state and then the Electoral College determine the election. We must stop referring to the popular vote as if it were some legitimate legal alternate way of determining who should be president. It is misleading the American people and leading to division and chaos. Oh, look, Douglas, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think the popular vote, people bring it up. I always tell you, it's exactly my analogy. If I'm playing somebody in tennis and I say, oh, it's been 2 hours, I'm ahead, I win. And they say, no, it's best 3 out of 5 sets. Yeah, it doesn't matter that I'm ahead 2 hours in. The U.S. Open match on Sunday went, I think, over 4 hours. So to declare yourself the winner after 2 hours, no, it doesn't work. If you're playing basketball and the score is 82-80 after the 4th quarter, You don't get to say, no, the game's to 100 if you've played the 4 quarters, right? It's exactly the same concept with the Electoral College. You're running the race you're running. You're not running a race for something else. So you're completely correct in that. I agree with you. We shouldn't get drawn into that. Team, tomorrow's Friday. Wow, this week has flown by. Please pass the buck. Check us out at bucksexton.com. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. Posting more and more there every day. Buck Sexton. Until next time, team, you have your orders. Sit back, relax, come out to the coast, have a few laughs. Shields high.